What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you here for another week of picks from every day we're covering. We talk the world of sports, wagering, having a good time, trying to give you some good college football picks here for this coming week 8 of action. Another pretty juicy slate here, SJ. I think we've got some good games to at least to take in and play some wagers on.
Well, and as we saw just last week, you don't really know. You never know what to expect. That's always for college. But even when it looks like maybe a little bit ho hum, we still get some good action. And now, I mean, upsets have kind of. We're gonna have to use tread lightly with that term because the teams we thought were going to be good, a lot of them are not, and just the opposite too. Some of those teams were like writing them off a couple weeks ago have made a hell of a turnaround.
Yeah, that's very true. It's been very unpredictable, especially these last couple of weeks. So, yeah, like we alluded to in the podcast this week, makes our job a little tougher trying to pick them out. But hopefully, we're going to seek out some good ones here still for you. Let's get rocking and rolling. I know you've got some early week stuff here going on, SJ. So, let you start here with the first one.
Yeah, neither of these is all too needs too much explanation. So I'll just go ahead and bundle them together. But a couple of Friday night matchups there. Miami against Louisville, 13 and a half point favorites. I think that's pretty just. If not, I could, I know Louisville's coming in with just a one-loss team, but just the competition hasn't even been close to what Miami's played in. Outside of Notre Dame, a game that they were up by, 14 points in the second half, Miami's kind of just rolled everybody. I know that Florida State game looked close at the end. But it was anything but that. Miami pretty much dominated from start to finish. So I'll take that 13 and a half points for them to cover easily. And also along the same lines, Cal, not exactly as high on them as being like somebody I would have a lot of confidence in typically. But when you're going up against just a freaking dumpster fire of a North Carolina team with, how many couches and time do you got to lay on these and go through that team's issues? But I'll just go ahead and just keep it simple. Cal's going to roll them like everybody else has. North Carolina hasn't been competitive at all. That is a mess. And like I said, dumpster fires putting it lightly. 10 and a half, they'll cover that easily. And I mean, it's an after dark thing, but you can probably still tuck yourself in by 11 o'clock Central Time with the game in hand.
Yeah, I like both those picks. I looked at that Miami one myself very hard. I love that pick. I think that's going to be a slam dunk to follow up there on Friday. That's a double header, by the way, on ESPN if you want to take those two in, 6 and 9:30, the kickoff times for those two games. I'm going to go to one here, and I'm going back to the well here. Maybe this will bite me at some point, but I'm going to ride them until they prove me wrong. Ohio State, they've covered damn near every week, and the lines keep getting bigger because obviously they're winning. And this week the competition gets worse. They're at Wisconsin. They look like an absolute wreck right now. I don't know. Who knows how much longer they've got to coach here pretty soon, I'm guessing. But if Iowa can go to Wisconsin and beat up on them in the evening, I think Ohio State can do it in the afternoon. It's a 2:30 game on CBS. 25 and a half is the number. I know that sounds like a crazy number for Ohio State, Wisconsin, but the way those two teams are trending right now, I like it, especially getting a couple of late scores when things get into, Wisconsin has that give up, mentality when we get to halftime here in this one. I'm going to go Buckeyes to cover again.
Yeah, the next one I think we're both on here, so I'll go ahead and give my spiel here, and then you can give your side of the story, as they say. But Ole Miss at Georgia there, and that 2:30 afternoon kickoff. From my perspective, it's a lot about what I'm kind of lacking of seeing in this Georgia team that was supposed to be a head and shoulders favorite to win it all, not the conference, but to win the whole thing. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from there. I just don't see it so far, and I'm not necessarily going against them, but I mean those struggles against Alabama and Tennessee kind of lingering in my mind, and then of course the lost Alabama we would end up being competitive, but they were definitely outplayed in that one with. I mean, I guess a resurging Alabama team, but at the time that was definitely surprising. The problem I'm having, the issue is in these big games, Ole Miss has not fared well almost at all, and they last week I'm gonna say chalk it up to them looking ahead to this game. They kind of walk through they got the win, so give them credit for that. They got past Washington State, but it was a lot tougher than it needed to be. And then they do have whatever this means. They do have a win over LSU on their resume. So take that for what you will. So I will take Ole Miss to cover that 6.5, but this is going to be on the bottom of our confidence levels, and it's just a matter of fact. Like I'm just not sold on Georgia, and I think maybe After a while, what do eventually you're going to be right. So we'll go ahead and we'll give Ole Miss another try, and we'll see if they can finally dust themselves off and win a big game here.
Well, every once in a while here on this program, we kind of have differing opinions, and so I'm going to play devil's advocate and play the other side of the jury here, and I'm going to go Georgia on the other side of it. The number that I saw was 7.5 there that they're laying, so that's not as good a deal, I guess, for me on that front. I don't love the hook, that's for sure, but I don't know. I'm going the other way because of exactly kind of what you just said. Ole Miss doesn't win the big game recently when they get these opportunities. They've already done it once this year. They had that LSU game that got hyped up pretty good, and they played well and they won. So I'll give them credit for that. But to expect them to do it again, I'm not buying. I'm going to go Georgia. And the other thing too is I just don't think Ole Miss's schedule, top to bottom, has been tough. I mean, I don't think they've played tough teams yet, aside from maybe giving credit for that LSU win. But and not to say that Georgia's been, absolutely, bombarded by tough games, but I think they're more ready for this situation than Ole Miss is. So I'm going to go Georgia to win this and cover on the other side. So we're gonna split opinions on that one. Another game that I'm going to go to here is Memphis. They are laying 21.5, taking on UAB. Of course, we just heard this week that Trent Dilfer was ousted there at UAB. Had a pretty miserable couple of years there. And anytime that happens, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're just going to, rally and play out their butts, or they're going to, fold the tent down and call it a year. This Memphis team has been playing pretty good. I think they have potential to really get humming on offense sometimes, and I think that's why they get there and cover in this one. Second half pull away, so I'm going to go Memphis to cover there, that 21.5, even though it is a pretty big number. The last one that I'm going to take a look at here, I'm going to go back to the SEC, and this is an interesting game. I think this will be a fun one to watch, but I do think one team is a little bit better than the other. Mizzou, coming off that tough one last week, had their opportunities against Alabama, but just didn't execute. Turned the ball over in a couple of key spots, which was, kind of uncharacteristic for them. I think they get back on track. I know it's tough to go on the road. They're going to Auburn, who hasn't played terrible in their own right in some bigger games. But I just feel like this Missouri team's got a little bit more firepower. I think they're able to handle. They're only laying 1.5, so they are the road favorite. So that tells you something there. I just like them to bounce back and get a big win here.
It seems a little weird for these two to be playing here at it's still in mid-October, but USC is traveling to Notre Dame. Usually, that's kind of was traditionally was the end of the year thing, but another casualty of a conference realignment. But that's all right. We get a good game in October, so maybe it's not the worst thing, and it's not congested on one of those crazy championship weekends. But just overall, like I know USC kind of stubbed their toe here a couple of weeks ago, but at the same time, to me, I'm looking at it, it was I guess a heroic field goal there at the end where USC had taken the lead, kind of played pretty bad, honestly, and then we're able to pull up that lead late, and then Illinois has kind of had that miracle kick there at the end to kind of beat them. So I don't necessarily chalk that up. Of course, they should have won that game, but at the same time, it was a ranked Illinois team at the time, I believe. And just overall, USC and last week was probably I think their biggest statement of the season. Obviously, I mean, not going on a limb to say that, but just the fact of how not that they Michigan is probably within the playoff contending striking, they're not going to be in it at this point by the looks of things, but to beat them soundly the way they did, and the score did kind of showcase it. Maybe it should have been wider margin. USC controlled that game and totally dominated that. So I think that, to me, coming off the heels of that and just the overall the kind of numbers they've put up, how well they've played offensively, that's going to kind of a tough recipe for a Notre Dame team that, I mean, they have won, sizable margins here in the last few weeks, but they ever outside of those first two, and I know they were tough against Miami and A&M, but they haven't played anybody with a pulse, really. I mean, they've just kind of been rolling across, and that's who's on your schedule. You got a tough start. You can't play, these amazing teams week after week, but at the same time, you got to take it for what it is. I mean, blowing out at Arkansas, who's fired their coach now, and then Purdue is Purdue always. I guess Boise last year, you talked to me about that. This year, that's a different Boise program. So I just think USC is the better team, and I'm not even I'm not going to take them to cover that 8.5 because that's a pretty big number even as a home team. So I wouldn't be against somebody if they feel kind of along those lines of me and they feel that, maybe take them out outright winner. I wouldn't be against that either. But I'll, for the purpose of getting back on track here after a little bit of a tough week last week for us, let's go ahead and just take that 8.5. That's very doable, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why I think I'm with you on that too. Because one, I've seen some chattering of folks wanting to go the other way with Notre Dame, and I think that perception usually ends up being wrong the other direction if it happens early in the week. And the fact that you've got some momentum here for USC, and there's history between these two teams. They have these battles year in and year out. And it's always a hotly contested game. Some of the best ones that we've seen in the last 2 decades with when they were back on top of the mountain, both of them. I think that's motivation enough. That it just seems like way too many points. 8.5. I can see a touchdown going one way or another. But 8.5. That's a lot to give in a game like this.
Well, I mean, essentially, it's said I mentioned conference lines, but essentially, this is like a conference game for these teams. They've been playing for how long, year after year. So it's as rivalry as it gets. Just one for fun because you played a big number the other way. I think Indiana, they're obviously a quality team, but there's going to be a bit of a hangover there, and they're a almost 28-point favorite, 27.5 as I see it now against home against Michigan State. I expect them to win comfortably, but if someone wants to take a chance on a big number, and that's one I saw that within conference, Michigan State they haven't done it yet, but they kind of pull one out here and there of just playing really well against a team that's a heavy favorite. So if somebody wants a long number, I'd say maybe look at that one because there could be some possibility there.
Yeah, don't hate it there. Yeah, the hangover probably will be real. All right, that's what we have for you on our list of picks here for you this week. Of course, we'd love it if you would follow along on Twitter. You see the handles there at SJMBets, at Cherokee CP. We put our picks out there for each and every week through that platform. And then, of course, would love to have discourse with you about what you're thinking, what you're playing here this week, and maybe take some live looks and even some fun, into the week plays here as well. So we'll put that stuff out there for you. Always throw out some occasional other picks on other things, NFL, UFC, those types of things, boxing, whatever's happening. So make sure you're following along there. And then if you would like to subscribe, share the podcast, available on all the major platforms, including our host at Spotify. Just search Every Day We're Covering. You'll find us. And then also subscribe, get the notifications on the YouTube channel. That's where we provide these video picks for each and every week, and then share them out to our social platforms as well. But make sure you're locked into that YouTube channel so you get that notification to know when they land. All right, that's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of picks here from Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.